Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff Mosher, Adam Caplan for another Inside the Birds presented by our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. It is the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. And here we are as we turn the page to August, right? The Eagles have practice 6 times. And then tonight, Adam, the always anticipated open practice at the link, which is always strange now because they don't do interviews after practice. They usually do all the player teleconferences for the reporters earlier in the day. And then they have the night practice, and then bam, the next day they're off again. But yeah, we were starting to get now a successive number of practices, and we just get more information. And I think that the night practices are always fun for the public to finally get to see.
Yeah, it's cool. We, the media, we're allowed on the field.
Yep.
So, in fact, last year, it was really interesting. It was the day that they signed Zach Cunningham and Miles Jack, and they both were there. They didn't practice. They were just in jerseys. So, yeah, that was a big day. That was an interesting day when they need some help at inside backer. But anyway, yeah, this is a big one tonight because remember now, it's crazy, their schedule. So they were off on Wednesday. Well, actually, they didn't practice, but they had a walkthrough. They practiced then. I'm assuming it doesn't say what it is. They're not practicing. It might be a walkthrough, and then they have Saturday off. So 3 out of 4 days they're not practicing. So this is a big one tonight.
Yeah, it is. And look, this should be like you mentioned, a pretty not only intense practice, pads and everything, but also a lengthy practice. And we mentioned this on the last show is that first practice that was 70 minutes where we're like, whoa, my God, that wound up being the norm here. I mean, they've gone even a little bit longer in some practices. So, this is something Vic Fangio was asked about when he became defensive coordinator. They said, hey, are you going to lobby for longer practice times? And he said, well, I can only do so much, but he kind of insinuated, yeah, I don't know if this is just a Vic Fangio thing or if it's also because Nick Sirianni believes after last year's collapse that they need more time. But I do think it's good. It's good. You're learning a new offense, totally new offense, learning a totally new defense. It makes sense that you'd want to have those guys out there a little bit longer. You're not coming off a Super Bowl appearance. You really need that extra time.
Yeah, and by the way, the longest practice was between an hour and 35 and an hour and 40, which is really long. In fact, when I was with the Commanders earlier this week, they had their first day in pads was only an hour and 10.
Wow.
I was like, what are you guys trying to be like Philly? It was interesting. So yeah, so I look forward to that. And it's been an interesting 6 practices for sure with the Eagles. We'll get into that today.
Yeah, a couple of injuries, couple of transactions, and then of course we'll go through the offense and defense as far as what we're hearing and what we're seeing on the practice field. And of course, so today is the big day that we've mentioned, our Patreon relaunch, our tiers, our new tiers that we're introducing. It's going to be 2 new tiers and 3 tiers overall. And by the time people are listening to this, they may be able to sign up right now. So you can go to patreon.com/insidethebirds and get a full breakdown of all the tiers, what they entail. And later in the podcast, I'll go a little deeper into it. But today is the day that has been unveiled. And listen, it's okay if you don't sign up today, right? If you want to take your time, you want to read through it. It's not like a 1 day or a 1 week thing. It's just our new Patreon relaunch for the upcoming year and perhaps beyond until we change it again if we ever have to. But I just didn't want anybody to think that today is the only day. You got plenty of time, but you really, to start enjoying the August benefits, right? This is all new. You want to be a subscriber or a member in August. So patreon.com/insidethebirds is where you can go to sign up. Let's talk about some injuries and some transactions, Adam. There are some players that we joke about who make the rounds in the NFC East. Like it used to be Alfred Morris, who's played for, I think, every NFC East team except for the Eagles, right? I don't think he's been with the Eagles, but now we have a new guy, and that is the interior offensive lineman, Nick Gates, who has been with the Giants, who has been with the Commanders, and is now an Eagle.
Yeah, he's interesting player. He had a very bad he broke his leg a couple years ago. It was pretty significant. Give the guy credit. He's a center guard. We had some great intel last night, which we put on Patreon in our live stream. But just to give you a couple nuggets here, his best position is guard. To put it mildly, that's based on what we were told. So, yes, he could play center. Yes, he could play guard. In fact, he was a tackle in college, but he's really a tackle. He's a guard center who's better off playing guard. he's the word in scouting circles and coaching circles is he's an old school tough guy. He's a guy you want, like if you're in a street fight, this is a guy you want. We have to remember he wasn't drafted, so he's had to work his way up. He's a great story and of development. In fact, his 2022 season was good enough. He got paid by Washington last year, 3 years, 16.5 million, and the new regime didn't want him. They didn't like him, so they cut him, and they still owed him a couple million fully guaranteed of the 8.5 million guaranteed. So they moved on, but this is a nice signing at this point. Okay, I get it. Washington cut him, so they didn't want him. But again, that was Ron Rivera made the call there, and Ron Rivera is no longer there. So Cliff Kingsbury, he may not fit Cliff, but the Eagles obviously know him. He's been in their division. They're going to take a look at him because, man, the Eagles are all sorts of banged up. Nothing major. Dickerson's dealing with something. Tyler Steen is dealing with something. Brett Toth just came back. Keegan is dealing with a minor shoulder injury. He's able to work, and we detailed after the draft that we had heard some teams had issue with some problems with his upper body, some medical stuff. So in terms of shoulders, whatever the case may be, upper body. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they really need a guard, and now they have one who's done it before.
It's interesting because when they signed Sharping, we thought, hey, here's a guy who has playoff experience, who has starting experience. I know he's had to play in his career mostly guard. He has played a little bit of tackle. Here's a guy, though, in Gates, who's played center and guard. So we go back to the fact that he has snapped the ball. And after Cam Jurgens, they don't have a ton of guys who have a long history of doing that. I think Sharping has snapped the ball. Matt Hennessy, not very. He has a little bit, right? He played center for the Falcons.
Oh, yeah.
But he just, he's Matt Hennessy. He hasn't proven much in this league. So it's an example of the Eagles just going to get value on the free agent market, putting them in there and seeing them with what they've got.
Well, it's really a right guard issue because Steen's hurt with an ankle injury, right? Mm-hmm. Matt Hennessy has really only started left guard. As we noted when they drafted Keegan, he's a left guard. He's not played right guard. So they really need another guard. And you just mentioned Max Sharping. I'm a little surprised he's not gotten a bigger run. I understand. Look, he was available for a certain reason. The Bengals didn't bring him back. But we'll see. Now they've also have preseason, the joint practice with the Patriots in 2 weeks. So maybe Sharping can move up. But they had a numbers issue with guys being available. And look, you need some guys with experience at this point. You might as well. It's very rare for a young developmental player to be on the street. At this point, it's usually vested veterans who, for whatever reason, are still available. And there's a reason that this guy's available. But they're going to take a look at Gates, and I would assume guard. But again, he can play center.
All right. To make room for him, they waived Mario Goodrich, and Andrew DiCecco and I were having a sort of a football nerd conversation about, wow, Mario Goodrich was like the first guy up to get those interior slot reps last year when the Eagles were really like thin at that position. And here they are a year later, and Goodrich is waived. But think about who they kept. Like Sean Stevens is a guy who made the team as an outside corner. We know he has blistering speed. He played at Ferris State, though. It's not, he's a real project, right? He has not gotten that many reps because he's, the lowest of the rung there at the corners, but they're keeping a guy like Sean Stevens over someone who they already put more work into with Mario Goodrich. I just thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Stevens was an undrafted free agent. Yeah, he's on the team for now. He's still a major long shot, but you know what? You never know. You never know what happens when you get a guy in preseason. He balls out. You don't want to subject him to waivers because if the guy looks great for 3 games on tape in preseason, you're not going to expose him to waivers. It's exactly why Tanner McKee, 100% why the Eagles didn't cut him. They didn't have a great training camp, but the tape was so good in preseason. They're like, this guy's a quarterback. We're not going to expose him to waivers. Hey, Sean Stevens is a smaller guy, pretty competitive. You talk about Ferris State, but listen, how he's good at this. Like, if a guy if a guy balls out, the guy's going to be on the roster, and they'll figure out a way to make it happen. Again, he's a major long shot. All of a sudden, they've got a lot of guys who could play nickel inside, not nickel outside, nickel slot. And we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's true because Mario Goodrich was a guy that they've kind of developed a little bit. But hey, to each his own.
That's the business. All right, we'll get into some injuries here. Those were the transactions. We'll get into some injuries. First, we're going to pause real quick to hear a word from our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
All right, not bad with the, they've had a padded practice down. So you always wonder what the next day or two, I mean, they get the days off, but you always wonder what's going to come out of that. But the injury situation so far, not too bad, Adam. On offense, we just talked about it's more offensive line oriented. We've seen Landon Dickerson start off with the toe laceration, then he had to leave a practice. Tyler Steen, we know, is dealing with the ankle, and we'll see when he comes back, hopefully by this coming week. And Trevor Keegan, interestingly, I mean, he went out of a practice and then watched the rest of it, and then the next day he was back in a limited capacity.
Yeah, so as we mentioned to start the show, the shoulder thing is the one that you worry about based on medicals from other teams. We were told that something to keep an eye on, and he's a tough guy, man. He's another interior guy who's pretty tough, not the greatest athlete in the world, but he played for Michigan because hard running the football. So we'll see how he does there. And then defensively, Burks is not practicing. He got hurt in the first practice, hasn't practiced since. So that's something to keep an eye on. Cooper DeJean still an active NFI. The hope is by mid-August he's back practicing. We'll see. And Sidney Brown, of course, active PUP coming back from the ACL. And I've noticed watching him, he's getting a lot of mental reps, which is important, by the way, because you got to see how guys are lined up. And look, there are differences between the guys who were running the Fangio defense last year and the real Fangio this year. So he's got to know that.
Yeah. Each day that passes, that this is what your injury list looks like. You never love injuries, but you're like, okay, it could be worse. You see it already around the league. A couple of guys have had some lower like ACL and Achilles injuries and are already out for the year. So you knock on wood and you see that the Eagles, toe laceration or toe injury for Landon Dickerson pales in comparison. And most of these other guys like DeJean and Brown, that they're making their way back. So it'll be a little bit. All right. So that is basically the injury situation. It's been pretty good. And let's get into what our observations were for offense, for defense, starting, of course, with the offense and the quarterbacks. I tell you, I think we talked about this last pod, and there's maybe been the one practice since that, but it was the padded one. Now the pads came out, and I don't know if you heard some of the players on defense, Adam. They were like, everybody's talking about the offense right now, but let the pads come out. And there was certainly on that day of the first day of pads, defense had some wins that they may not have been having. But in general, as it was told to me, the big takeaway from Jalen Hurts so far is not one of his passes has yet to find the opponent's hands, which is big.
Yep. Okay. So let's go inside what we saw, what we know, and what we've seen and what we've heard on offense. So Hurts has been really good. I don't chart practice anymore. It just became a waste of time because I need context when passes are thrown. I need to know if they're easy passes that anyone should complete or any quarterback should complete, or what was the degree of difficulty. He's made some really big time throws. He is I'm not saying he's at 22 level offseason. When you and I were there, I was like, okay, he's ready to have a really good year. I didn't know it'd be quite that spectacular. Or when Wentz had that awesome 17 offseason, I felt he was going to have a breakout season. He went way farther than we expected. But Hurts, again, I'm not saying he's back at 22 form, but he looks really good. The only thing is, and this is as someone explained to me, the more he practices with Kellen under Kellen Moore and Doug Nussmeier, the quarterback's coach, the less he'll probably run on his own. Because they're designing runs, by the way. There's definitely designed runs in there. There's plenty of motion. There's a lot of traffic. But if you look at where he was in OTAs, where people were literally jumping off bridges, oh my God, the offense is terrible. The defense is killing them. Folks, it was a brand new scheme. Right. I mean, you can't just expect. We said it on the shows, particularly myself, I'm not worried about anything. It's a damn all season. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Let's get to if by August 15th he's still looking like that, then we got a problem. It's not going to happen. This is a really good offense that Kellen runs. Talk to so many people who work for him. Quarterbacks love it. But the thing that Jalen had to get used to is this is a motion offense. He's got to get used to it. And by the way, he's gotten used to it. Now, again, I know this is not a game. We understand that the speed of a game is way different. But in training camp, it comes faster than OTAs. And he's handling it really well, as you mentioned. No picks so far, which is particularly important because their line, the interior of their line is so banged up. We're going to get into the reconfiguration with it because of the injuries. I know their offense wasn't as good the last couple of days, but you know what? Again, he's not turning it over. It doesn't look like it did in OTAs. That's a big deal for me because I want to see that it's way faster. You got to move fast here. Like things got to go, go, go. The practice, by the way, the coach is doing a great job keeping this thing moving. So yeah, he's been really good. Pickett's picked it up too. Pickett's been better. So yeah, and look, they know that they know the other kid, McKee, is he's a developmental quarterback, and preseason will ultimately decide whether he makes it or not. But I'm interested also to see Pickett in the preseason because he had a great offseason last year and preseason, but he was just not very good in the regular season. He has a crazy. It's funny, he has a winning record, but if you look at the tape, it's not great.
Right.
So, but we'll see here. The talent level here is pretty good.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I know some people have asked about Tanner McKee, and it's going to be the same thing as last year, where you're really not going to be able to see the development until the preseason games when he gets a lot of reps, because in training camp, you just don't see a whole lot of rep. They have those individual periods, I think, for the backups right after training camp that they've started to do that the media doesn't always get to see. So you really just don't get to see enough of Tanner McKee if you're a reporter. So again, when the preseason games, and my gosh, we're not that far, 9 days away from the preseason opener, then you'll get to see a little bit more of Tanner McKee and his development there.
He's got a rocket of an arm. He doesn't move all that well, but he's got a rocket arm. Yeah, you're exactly right. Because the preseason, again, to sum this up, we'll move to running back in a second. That's ultimately going to determine whether he's there. Because Pickett now, the Eagles are locked into his contract through 25. So is Pickett a developmental quarterback? Is it McKee? Well, we'll find out.
Yeah. So at running back, it's interesting because Saquon Barkley had he missed. Was it the padded practice that he missed for personal reasons, or the one before that?
Two before.
Yeah. So that gave an opportunity for Gainwell and Shipley to get the lion's share of the reps, and both of them are. It's interesting. Both of them are driven in different ways. Gainwell said he's gained weight. He's trying to get bigger, a little stronger, and he thinks that will help him be a little more explosive, which is interesting because he's talking about adding weight. But he's looked all right as far as I've been told. And
wait, do you mean he lost? I thought am I wrong? Did he not say he lost weight?
I thought he gained weight too. Maybe it was lost weight.
Okay. Yeah.
Was he over 200
his thighs were
pounds?
huge. I'm sorry.
Was he over 200 pounds?
I don't remember, but I remember last year the mass he put on his legs. I was like, whoa, okay.
Right.
We'll see. I thought he was talking about. I could be wrong. I could have sworn he said in the offseason that he lost some weight, but
that's faster. Maybe it is lost to be more explosive. That would make more sense to be more explosive.
Yes.
Will Shipley. Now, we reported when the Eagles drafted him that even though he didn't catch the ball as much as Travis Etienne at Clemson, right? That the Eagles felt that he had good pass catching acumen and route running, that he could sit there and run routes. And I know Andrew DeCecco wrote about a really nice wheel route that he ran and caught a deep pass from Jalen Hurts. And he has shown the ability to catch the football pretty well throughout the camp. So you got two guys here in Gainwell and Shipley who are a little bit different. What have you observed about different as far as their juice?
Yeah, so I was told by a running backs coach who had to turn grades in for the draft that now he didn't have the grade the Eagles had apparently. Well, Eagles took him in the fourth. We don't know what their grade was, but exactly what their grade was. But this guy gave him a lower grade, but he goes, man, because I asked him, I said, what do I need to look for? He goes, short area quickness. And then we saw it was it Saturday? Yeah, last Saturday's practice when I went over Andrew, I go, see the difference between one catch in the flat shows you the difference between Gainwell and Shipley in a short area. Gainwell's just not the explosive guy we thought he would be, but he's downhill, he's decisive. He's become the street yardage back, which nobody really knew he was. Even Ryan Silverfield, his head coach of Memphis, didn't. When Ryan's talked to us in our interviews with him over the years, he really didn't think that would be his role here. But look, things are different when you get to the NFL level. But Shipley, and you see the short area juice, man. He brings it. He's got very good hands, this running backs coach told me, and we've seen that so far. He catches it really nice, and he's off and running. Like he's got short area explosion. That's important because the backs will catch the football in this offense.
Absolutely. Now, on the flip side, Ty Davis-Price has been dropping a few passes in Bragg. A couple of guys have had some drops issues. We'll get into him. He's been one of them. And we'll see. We've talked about, will this team keep 4 running backs? Who knows? It doesn't seem like they can if they want to go a little
It'll be
heavier at
hard.
other areas, but that's obviously going to be a question as we get deeper into camp here. Can someone force the Eagles to say, hey, we should keep this guy as a fourth running back for, whether it's special teams, kick return, or even getting in on the field in some situational way?
Ty Davis Price's good explosion, but the hands have to be better.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question. Like I know we were fooled last summer because the backs were getting the ball, particularly Swift, and he didn't really in the regular season. I'm going to go out on a limb to say that won't happen again. And then if it does happen again, that the backs aren't getting it, we'll never talk about it again. We promise. Then we give up. We're throwing the flag up. Okay, folks, we're done.
Right.
We don't know what's going on. But anyway, yeah. So I like the juice that Shipley has. He's a good compliment to Gainwell. But we know Barkley, based on his contract, is going to have to be a 3-down back to justify it over 12 million a year. He's got to be a 3-down back.
Mm-hmm.
But situationally, there may be some times where maybe Shipley is over Gainwell. We get that Gainwell's a number 2, but maybe there's situationally where Kellen and his staff says, you know what, Shipley could give us a little bit better juice here than Gainwell.
I look forward in the preseason games to seeing how Shipley does in pass protection, because that is really where
That's
you'll
important.
get a good
Yep.
idea on that
Yep.
and his development there. Let's move to receiver. And I think the spot that we really have to zero in on here is that number 3 inside slot receiver, where if you're just going by snaps or who's running with the first team, you're like, it seems to be a different person depending on what day it is. I mean, it was Paris Campbell early, and I think John Ross has even saw some inside slot reps. And then they get Johnny Wilson, the 6'7" guy, has been getting some run there at him, and Aeneas Smith, who is someone who's struggled with the drops. So it's a carousel right now.
So if you ask me or Geoff or anyone who has been in practice or knows what's going on, Paris Campbell was the clear 3 after the first 4 practices, but not anymore. So let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, and I think you mentioned this months ago after the Eagles drafted Wilson. And obviously you could fill in the blanks here because I can't remember exactly what you said, but I remember you and I talked after I got back from practice before we could actually check into what was going on. And you go, remember what I told you about Johnny Wilson playing inside?
Yes.
And I'm like, what did you say exactly? But man, I was blown away because he's not really a short area possession receiver. He's never been that guy. Right. But what can you tell us about this? Because I was kind of surprised that, I mean, one practice, it was last Saturday's practice. He pretty much every snap he was on the field, he was inside.
Well, first of all, you and I both know that when we spoke to other teams throughout the process, there were teams that felt like they may need to transition him to tight end because he's 6'7". So that right there is sort of your first clue that some teams did look at him as an inside player, but more as a flex tight end than an actual slot wide receiver. The reason, as I understand it, that the Eagles are doing, and by the way, this is an experiment right now where as you mentioned, it's not like he was a slot receiver at Florida State. Normally, when you have a guy that tall and of that length, you want him on the outside for contested catches. You want him in the red zone, things like that. But this all goes sort of back to Kellen Moore's need for a slot wideout and somebody who fits the bill, Adam. And I think Kellen Moore is going to have to change his philosophy or what he's done in the past a little bit because of his personnel. What I mean is, if you look at his history as a 11 personnel centric offensive coordinator, he has always put his most versatile / impactful receiver in the slot more than maybe other offenses do. Go back last year, Keenan Allen played a ton of slot, was on his way to a record-breaking number of catches for him last year, except for the injuries. If you go back to his time in Dallas, he played CeeDee Lamb in the slot far more than Dallas did last year when Lamb started to be more of an outside receiver. That is part of what Kellen Moore has done. If you look at this year's offense, the guy that you would say is the most versatile and reliable to continue to play that role would be Devontae Smith. You would want him to be a CeeDee Lamb or Keenan Allen-like high volume possession receiver who can also stretch the field the way Lamb and Allen have been able to do. However, Slim Reaper, his body type, I've talked about this with people, right? That's dangerous for him. He's just not a big like CeeDee Lamb and not compact and strong the way I mean, he's strong, but you know, Keenan Allen is built. So I don't think Kellen Moore is going to be able to play Devontae Smith in the slot at the same volume that he was able to do it with Keenan Allen and CeeDee Lamb. And so that leaves him now looking for who can play the slot. And if you're predominantly 11 personnel centric and you need to run out of those packages, Paris Campbell ain't your guy, I don't think, in that situation. And again, you don't want Devontae's body getting sacrificed there. 6'7" Johnny Wilson. If you're already thinking that he could play tight end, you think that maybe he can get his body into enough people to be able to block a little bit. So that to me is an indicator of why you're seeing Wilson be able to play there. Now you're right. You brought this up to me. You still have to be able to catch the ball. You still have to be able to separate. Just because you can block and you're a big body does not make you a slot receiver. So there's a lot to be learned here, but this is why Johnny Wilson is getting these looks now to see. At the end of the day, Adam, I think slot this year might be more situational than having a guy who's going to be in that spot 75% of the time.
Yeah, Kellen needs he really needs to rely on a slot receiver. Like he had Cole Beasley, did very well.
Yep.
And Britton Covey had the day of his life last Saturday. You know, it's kind of weird because they're running so many guys from the inside. Wilson and Nia Smith, he needs to catch the ball. Covey had a great weekend, a great day last Saturday. John Ross a little bit. We're so early. Campbell was the boy. I mean, it was like really him again. First 4 days, it was like him. It seemed like it was in pencil. Campbell's going to be the 3, but the fact that they keep working these other guys in there, that would worry me about, because Kellen's got to be able to run his offense. So we're going to learn a lot over the next couple of weeks. If they're not happy, they won't wait till the end of the preseason to bring a veteran in. They'll have to do it sooner than that. And the other guy I do want to mention is Austin Watkins. I know he's been quiet so far. I know a lot of fans want to see him because he's been with a bunch of teams, but he's talented. I mean, this kid could play a little bit. He hasn't shown it yet, but he's a guy I want to keep an eye on as we go forward here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that ideally, Nia Smith probably has the skill set that you want to be your slot, except for the fact that he's dropping passes right now, and he's a rookie. And
I get it. I know
you can't. I mean, because he's a natural fit for his size, and I think he played there in college. And I was told he's not a bad blocker, because he played that spot in college. So, and he's compactly built. He's strong, even though he's small. But you got to you have to be reliable. You have to catch passes. So we'll see how that goes. As far as offensive line is concerned, we've talked a lot about Becton at right guard, and he'll obviously get more opportunities there with as long as Tyler Steen's going to be out. I was told he's has good days, bad days. Don't get too excited, don't be too down. But pads coming out just recently gives us, I think our better evaluations and what we'll hear are ahead of us because of the pads just now coming out.
Right. So the just what they've done in training camp. So Keegan's been at left guard. Becton's played left guard and right guard. He just moved over to the final 2 days because of Steen being out. And he's also seen some time at right tackle. Fred Johnson's mostly been the left. Bernard has played right tackle and right guard. It's been kind of up and down. Hennessy's got some steps at center and guard. The kid that is really intriguing is this. His name is Anim Dankwa.
Yeah,
from Howard. One team told me he had the 5th longest wingspan of any player for this draft. It's funny how I get it from a data standpoint. Teams will know this. It was interesting. So he wasn't drafted, but he's seen time at right tackle. I know the Eagles are pretty excited about him. So we'll see what the preseason looks for him. And then Dylan McMahon has got some work with the second team. We'll see about Nick Gates tonight. I'll be interested to see if he gets in there. Max Sharping, he's been like the surprise. I thought he'd kind of move up to the second team. I know it's early. We need to relax a little bit on that. Maybe he does, but just a little bit surprised he hasn't gotten a little bit more run with the second team.
There you go. I did neglect tight ends here. I think we talked about this pretty much on the last pod, that Calcaterra had really emerged as your number 2 to the point where they're saying it in press conferences. That doesn't close the door on anybody, but right now you've got Goddard, Calcaterra, and Uzama as your top 3 tight ends, and just haven't heard enough yet from Alberto or anybody or EJ Jenkins to know. So we'll have to just kind of keep monitoring that as well.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is that, here's the thing with Calcaterra. He's got to be able to block. Because if they're going to go 12 personnel and cut Uzama, Goddard is the block. He's the wide tight end. I mean, he would be you don't want Dallas. I know there's sometimes he has to block, but the reason why they signed Uzama is to help Goddard out, just like Jack Stoll did. And if that doesn't happen, I know Calcaterra's had a really good offseason, but he's not a great blocker.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is going to be tough. And I get it. Calcaterra, because they're going to be more of an 11 personnel team. Goddard, either Goddard or Calcaterra is the F or the move tight end. And then and also if Uzama makes it, if they want to give Goddard a breather, they can, when they go 12, Calcaterra's the move and Uzama's the Y. So there are other things that they can do. I'm just a little surprised that people are running with this. Oh, well, then Uzama won't make it. I wouldn't go, look, I get it. Calcaterra's had a really good offseason, but let's let this thing develop over 3 or 4 weeks before we put the guy off the roster.
Good idea.
Yeah.
All right. Listen, it is the summer, and I know that the Philadelphia Phillies are in a little bit of a swoon here, but there's still nothing better than getting out to the bank to go watch a Phillies game. And if you want to do that, you need to be using the Game Time app. The Game Time is the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. That means getting tickets faster and easier, and prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer that it gets to first pitch. That's part of their killer last minute deals. They have all-in prices. They have the great view from your seat. It moves, it's like 3-dimensional. So if you move your phone, you get to see like, the picture of your seat moving and the stadium moving as well. I love that. And it's just their best place, the best app to go to get the lowest price guarantee. They take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. So make sure, the Phillies will come back from a road trip soon, and they'll have some really good home games, and hopefully they'll turn it around. Go get your tickets to see them through not only the pennant race, but then coming up in October in the playoffs. They'll be in the playoffs. We know that. Get your tickets there. And then, of course, Eagles tickets as well. All the tickets. And if you want summer concerts, any kind of shows, comedy acts, you can go use Game Time for that as well. They've got the flash deals. They have the zone deals. Save 60% off by buying last minute for anything you want to see. Sports, concerts, comedy, theater, using their priority last minute deals. And again, it's the all-in pricing. You know how much you're going to pay up front immediately. There's no surprise fees at checkouts. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code BIRDS, BIRDS, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code BIRDS, BIRDS, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Also, we hope everybody has been reading our coverage of Eagles training camp, mostly by Andrew DeCecco, who's been doing a phenomenal job. It's on InsideTheBirds.com. So make sure you go to InsideTheBirds.com to read every day. Andrew's writing features. He's writing observations from training camp. He's writing trend stories, scheme stories. So make sure you check that out, InsideTheBirds.com. All right. And as I mentioned, Patreon launched today. It's 3 tiers now. We already have our $8 tier that everybody's familiar with. We have a $12 tier now that's going to come with everything in the $8 tier. But now what we're adding is hosting our podcast immediately after recording, and all of our other shows on Inside the Birds coming up in the fall season, posting it immediately on the Patreon platform with no ads. All right. That is such a great bonus. No ads. It goes right on. Even me talking right now, it's not football. You won't hear this. All right. When we upload it on the Patreon channel. For our tier 2 and tier 3 subscribers. Tier 2 is $12. And also for tier 2, we do our monthly Ask an Eagle live stream. You'll get a former Eagles player, coach, or front office executive. We'll do an interview with them, and you'll have a chance to be in the chat room and ask a question personally to that Eagle. And then tier 3, which is $15, is everything I just said. Plus, you're going to get an Ask Greg Cosell live stream throughout the Eagles season. For as long as the Eagles are playing, including the bye week. Ask Greg Cosell live stream. You get in the chat room. How about that? I know. You get in the chat room with us. You ask Greg anything you want, as long as it's pertaining to football, and he'll answer it for you. And any bonus, yes, I gotta throw that disclaimer in, as long as it pertains to football. Or you might want to ask him about his great baseball career in high school growing up in Queens.
Or basketball career, right?
Or basketball career playing against Ernie Grunfeld. He'll give you that too.
Good job. God, his bio. Very nice.
That's right. So that's tier 3, $15. And of course, anything that we come up with stuff all the time. We'll just put that for our tier 3 members. Say, here's a bonus content for you. That is our Patreon relaunch. Again, available today, patreon.com/InsideTheBirds. Adam, let's talk about the defense now. Front 6, front 7. I think we're going to really enjoy talking about the secondary a little bit. But what have you been hearing about the front 6, 7, whatever you want to call it?
We don't talk about Jalen Carter enough. There's a saying in personnel: "Low man wins." It's sort of the. I don't know if we even talked about this before, but someone put me onto it with Jalen Carter, so I'm like, that's good stuff. his ability at his size to get lower and to move people is something else, man. He's just this is a special football player in terms of talent. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And without Fletch there, he's now the 4i. He's playing Fletch's 4i spot of the two of them. So it's pretty remarkable to me what he's able to do. And I'm looking forward to what happens in that joint practice, because I'd be surprised if he played in the preseason, but nevertheless, it's in that joint practice is when the starters usually play anyway. Interested to see how he does there. Jordan Davis has been steady. Milt Williams has been steady. He's on a contract year. And, the Eagles are pretty light at depth. So Moro Ojomo has basically been the backup for Jalen Carter. Not all the time, but he's been the main guy as a 4i. And this guy's explosive. And we're going to I know you got some good information on him. We'll get into a second.
Mm-hmm.
But because they just don't have anyone else. They don't have any veterans. He's got to play. And usually you would not go with a 7th-round pick as being the top backup. But this guy's got talent. And I know he was in the 7th round, so sometimes these guys are really not expected to play, but Eagles are definitely that. I would tell you basically right now what we know and what we've heard, what we've seen. They're clearly counting on him to have a nice role here. And then Marlon Tuipulotu is healthy. He's going to be right now. He'd be Jordan Davis's backup. But that's really it right now. They don't have. They're kind of light here. So Mustafa as a backup knows. Thomas Booker, who put on weight. I'm interested what he can do in the preseason because he was drafted by the Texans. And Gabe Hall. He just hasn't done it yet. So, but he's a guy that I know that is very talented. He just needs to be given more of a chance. So they're gonna, they'll see what these young guys do and then go from there in terms of signing other players.
There was a play I was told about in which Jalen Carter ragdolled Mekhi Becton, and
yes,
I just want you to think about that.
Yeah,
think about how big Mekhi Becton is. Like, of course he can get beat. Anybody can get beat.
Of course,
but he wasn't sped around. He was ragdolled. So that. I mean, the type of leverage and strength you have to be able to do that, that's pretty special.
That's what I meant about his ability ability to use torque from his lower body and his hips is something else. Because now that they're not in pads every day, but that I'm hoping tonight that they're in pads because I want to be able to see I want to be able to get a little bit of closer look of on Carter. It's something I'll be looking for. But I was just told that his lower body strength is something else. And it's like, we don't really talk about that. That's a good nugget. We really need to. He's a pretty special football player. And if he stays on the straight and narrow, everybody knows what happened at Georgia. But if he does everything he's supposed to, he's got a chance to be a gold jacket player. So I'm just telling you, that's the talent level.
The talent, certainly has the talent. Absolutely.
Yeah, he got all in his body, folks. It's just, and Clint Hurt's great. But sometimes coaches can only do so much. Sometimes it's up to the player. This is a breakout season for this guy. It's right on the horizon. I'm just telling you, it's right there.
Similarly, I keep hearing good things about Moro Ojomo. Worked over. I guess Keegan got some run, interestingly, with the first team or second team, which is kind of strange, and because he's a rookie and he's a day 3 guy. But yeah, I was told that Moro worked him over a little bit in that moment and was able to cause some disruption. So that's good. It's a good sign for maybe not for Keegan, but a good sign for the defense and for Ojomo.
So I think what happened was that's when Dickerson left again. He didn't practice because of the lacerated toe, and then something happened with his leg. I don't know what happened. I don't know what it is, but anyway, Keegan came in because really, honestly, after that you've got. Now, Hennessy can do it because he's played left guard. Sharping could do it. Mm-hmm. As we mentioned earlier, they don't seem to be going to Sharping. And Dylan McMahon's only center. Jason Poe is really small.
Right.
They just got Nick Gates. I'll be interested to see if Gates is on the field tonight to practice. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, overall with this offensive line going against this D line, and by the way, the D line because with all the injuries on the interior, they really started bringing it. Maybe they smell blood. I don't know. Only they would know, and Clint Hurt would know. But man, they were bringing it the last couple of days.
Well, that's always good. I mean, you always want to hear that's how the Eagles are built, right around their front line and their front four, and that's always what you want to hear. Edges. We really haven't heard a lot about Josh Sweat, and I don't know what to make about that. And eyes obviously all eyes are going to be on him. I think again. Pads will come out. Well, they're out now, and we'll get a little bit better. But I'm not going to make too much of this, but usually around now, we're like salivating over the type of training camp that Josh Sweat is having. And There just hasn't been as much this year. But that doesn't mean he's having a bad camp.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to me that these are the times where we're usually, oh my God, Josh Sweat is putting this guy in his rear end, or doing this and that.
Yeah, I've heard he's been fine physically, not
Mhm.
dragging the leg. So, which is, by the way, big, because last year that was an issue. Some of the Eagles' opponents told us that when they would watch the greatest tape for when they were going to go up against him. Bryce Huff, he's learning. This is a different defense than he was playing with. And by the way, they run the wide 9 with the Jets. So this is different. Although the Eagles in nickel do, one of the guys is a 9 technique.
Yes,
but the Niners and the Jets are running 9s way more than the Eagles would, and more of them. So Nolan Smith has been a great story, by the way. He is filled out. He's got that rare explosion. Scouts love that term, rare. Always understand what that means. It's stuff you usually don't see. He's built his body. He'd go to the weightlifting room there at NovaCare. He's jacked up, man.
it was actually in LA, right? Like, so he confirmed, I'm pretty sure he confirmed when he talked to reporters what we were saying. He used weird wording in OTAs. When somebody asked him what his weight was, he said, I'm coming in at 245. And I remember saying to you, that's a little weird. And I remember saying, I'm hearing he's not looking like 245. But then he told reporters that he said for 6 weeks, I went to LA. I'm assuming that's the end of OTAs, started training camp. He went to LA. He said he specifically went to LA because he hates LA, or he doesn't like it there. So he wanted to be in a place where he was only focused on doing what he had to do and no distractions. He must be the only person I know of in the history of the world that goes to LA for no distractions, but he hates it there. So whatever. And that's where he said he worked out a lot. And yes, he's now 245. He said at camp. So I think we were correct in reading the tea leaves there and what we were being told, that he wasn't quite 245 at OTAs. And that's why he said, I'm coming in at 245. And here he is at camp, and he has looked bigger and stronger. And as you said, he's moving really, really well.
He's explosive, man. He's the most explosive edge rusher they have. And Jalen Hunt's fascinating. He's more a third team guy right now. He's just learning, but he's long. You could see why teams are salivating. When the Eagles took him in a third, I don't know if the Eagles knew this, but I know other teams kind of like behind the Eagles. If the Eagles didn't take him, they were, because you can't find developmental guys like this. It's hard. He's a long ways away from being a factor, but man, by year 3, who knows? He could be starting with Nolan Smith. Who knows?
Right.
This guy's got rare explosion and rare size, and acquire flashes still occasionally. And Patrick Johnson, he was mostly going to be a special teams player. He's had some good rushes. So it's kind of, before we move on to inside backer, we got to see what Sweat is, because after the fall off last season, though he's healthy, you don't know quite what he's going to be this season. He's on a 1-year deal, though. He's got plenty to play for. He's only 27 somehow. Bryce Huff, you got to see. This is new for him. We'll see if he plays in the preseason. Nolan Smith, he could be I don't know, breakout candidate. It's always relative to how you determine it, or how you define it. But he's had a nice camp so far. BG, of course, has got his role. They'll have plenty of depth. That's not the problem. The problem is, can the guys who could be consistent? That we're not going to know for a while.
Right. All right. Inside linebacker. Look, I mean, the rotations continue to go between Devin White and Zach Bond, getting a lot of the first team reps. Nakobe Dean, we keep telling you, don't close the door on him. He has looked good when he's been out there, but especially as a blitzer. We'll see more in coverage as camp goes on and the pads are out. I do think 2 things are interesting. One, very good that Jeremiah Trotter was able to get back from whatever that calf thing or cramp thing that was, that forced him to leave. I think he and Ben Van Sumeren at times have gotten in there on, I don't know if it's first or second team, because they mix and match, but they're getting a decent amount of reps for guys who are fighting for jobs. So it's not, we talk about the first 3 guys, but those 2 guys are getting in there and showing what they can do as well. So this is a nice little, I don't know, it's not just like 2 guys to focus on. It's really all 5 and seeing how they develop and perform throughout the camp.
As coaches say a lot around the NFL, we're rolling guys in there. They are rolling guys in there. Devin White's got the most first team reps, but it's him and Bond who are the starters, and Dean comes in and he rotates in, and they use him situationally as well. On third down, you've seen him on first. Trotter Jr., it was calf cramp, and he's fine. He's so instinctive. Van Summeren's a big time athlete. He's a really good special teams player. It's not ideal to keep 5. It's really not. I I know we're not doing our roster breakdown yet in terms of, okay, what's a 53 look like, but it's going to be hard to imagine that they're not going to keep 5. I know it sounds crazy to keep
I'm
3
with you.
or 5 of these, but now Zach Bond going to be starting. Now, here's another question for you. If Dean starts over Bond, which you would think would happen, but it's certainly not a lock. Zach Bond's making good coin this season. I think his guarantees 3.5. I think they fully guaranteed 3.5 million.
Mhm.
A lot for it to cut him. But I'm fascinated because there's better competition. I know these coaches have to learn these guys. I got to think this is going to be, and plus they've gotten younger in certain respects, gotten younger. So this should be a better group. It has to be a better group, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I know we sometimes say that and it doesn't turn out that way, but
Yeah.
I like the variety and the athleticism that they mostly
Uh-huh.
have at this position. And I trust sort of Vic Fangio to put them in a good position to succeed. But again, they've got to go out and do it. I mean, they've got to play a little bit above what you might expect from an Eagles inside linebacker.
Plus, before we move on to corner and nickel, Burks isn't even working. So he also is another factor. Someone's got to go. You can't keep 6, right?
That's true. That is true. Someone will probably have to go. That's true. All right. Let us go move to the back end here. Before we do that, we'll hear a word from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you happen to go to Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get a great deal. If not, always visit them at SkyMotorCars.com and check out their great selection. All right, the back end. Listen, I mean, there's no better thing in camp to be, hearing and watching and observing things on Quinyon Mitchell, the rookie first rounder, playing all different types of position. He's played nickel, he's played dime backer, if you want to call it. He's played outside. And Isaiah Rodgers and Keely Ringo continue to mix and match at first team. And, the best case scenario is all these guys make the team and they've got options. They have variety. They can use Quinyon Mitchell maybe in an area, Adam, that they didn't think going into the year that they could as a nickelback. Who knows?
I love that Vic Fangio is doing all this stuff because there's so much that's happened that I was not told it would be happening or to expect.
Mhm.
We knew they played big nickel and they'll be doing that at some point, I would think. But because Vic gets knocked in coaching circles for being very vanilla, he's just great at execution. He makes the offense take too many plays. They get impatient. They throw picks. It's funny, they're not throwing picks, but there have been plenty of good defensive plays and so forth. But I just love that he's using Mitchell not as a traditional outside corner, nickel inside. He's played nickel outside. He's played outside in base. Now I know he's not starting on the outside. He's not taking first team reps on the outside. He's taking first team nickel inside. This is fascinating. And again, I'm going to use this rare term again. He's so smooth. He doesn't back down. I know there were some knocks. Bill Polian told us that the knock on him, and it's not his fault. I mean, he played at Toledo, so you're looking at a lower level of competition. But
Mhm.
Bill Polian told us, don't worry about that. That he would put it on like his top 10 criteria for evaluating a player way low. Like it might have been like a number 7, or some people might say number 2.
Yeah.
He said, grade the talent in the player. Don't grade the competition he goes up against so much. He said it's generally very overrated because Mitchell's looked the part. He's so smooth. It's just we're just the only thing they hasn't done now is be like, will there be a day in the next week or so? You would think it would happen where he runs over Ringo and Rodgers with the first team just to see how it, because you got to get eventually he's going to start the season, whether it's week 1, 3, or 5. He has to start. A, he's a first round pick, and B, the fact that doing all this and he's mentally handling it is unbelievable. I mean, this is the kids. I don't know how much of this kid has been asked to do this before. It's awesome.
Yeah. No, listen, I think we've
great.
got. I get the same thing from talking to personnel people and coaches. If you're going to take a guy from a small school, the one thing that the guy has to do is dominate the competition that he's playing at week in and week out. And there's no question when you spoke to people about Quinyon Mitchell that they felt he dominated the competition week in, week out. And
True.
so that made them feel more comfortable that he was a first round. Then he went to the Senior Bowl and hung with anybody who was there and had some really awesome battles against guys who were there. So yeah, same thing with Alex Hunt. I mean, he played at one of the smallest schools you can probably play at, but he definitely dominated the competition there, and that went along with the great athleticism that he showed. I'm not saying it's definitely going to work out. I'm just saying like they have it on tape to say, okay, we can make this leap because at least we've seen that when he lines up against the inferior competition, he whoops their ass. That's important.
And by the way, on that, when he lines up against AJ Brown, they've got some battles going on because he's, maybe AJ's a little bit taller. Obviously, he's stronger. Although Mitchell benched really well.
Yeah.
I think 225.
Yeah.
At the combine. I mean, this kid is the makeup, so mentally tough. But yet you got to get through the dog days of training camp. He's got to show up every time, and then obviously show up when it matters in the regular season because he was the top graded corner by almost every team we talked to, except for a couple, believe it or not. There were some teams that had some other players over him, but nevertheless, this guy's really gifted. You see the smoothness in his transition. No offense to Ringo, has had a good camp. We'll talk about him briefly here. He's had a nice camp. Mitchell's so much more smooth than so much smoother than Rodgers, even too, who's a really good athlete. But Mitchell even transitions better. It's one thing to see at the Senior Bowl. We were there for that, but to see it here at the NFL level is something else. And I get it. You clearly move on here. You clearly see what the Eagles see. And then Eli Ricks. Remember now, we have to understand here. This is a new staff on the back of you got Fangio, the real guy, new DB's coach, very few holdovers from the former staff. So they didn't coach Ricks. I know they didn't. They're new also, but they got to play the better players. And Rodgers and Ringo are better athletes. Ricks the great story last year. And he has gotten run with the twos, but has not gotten run with the ones that I know of or aware of.
Right. Did you want to add more on Ringo, or is that basically?
No, he's been fine, solid.
Yeah.
Look, people are getting on him for not the couple times he should have had picks. It's the way it's explained to me is you show it to him in the classroom. He knows it. Better ball tracking, better awareness. That's all. It's not a big deal. And then nickel. Because they've used Mitchell, which has been a surprise. It's Maddox, it's Mitchell, and Tyler Hall. They have the capability of using it. Obviously, if they needed CJ to do it, he can do it because he's one of the best in the NFL when he's done it. So they're good there. It's just I'm a little bit surprised that Mitchell is getting this run with the ones. Now we want to know what the reason is. Other than we could do it because mentally he could handle it. But is it because Maddox hasn't looked as good? I don't know. I don't want to make any assumptions. People make too many assumptions. Well, this guy's big in there. He must not like it. That's not always the case. We don't want to give you bad information. So we're going to look into what the reason is why they're doing it. But Vic Fangio clearly thinks he can handle it because it's his call. Pretty interesting.
There you go. We'll finish off with safety. I don't really have much, I don't know if there's much developing. We know CJ and Reed are out there as your first team safeties. Yep. Bradbury trying to make that transition. Tristan McCollum, it's still a very thin position. It's still very up in the air.
Yeah, to finish this off, I know they said Bradbury would play corner. I've not seen or heard that he's been a corner yet.
Right.
For the 6. It doesn't mean it won't happen tonight when I'm there, but McCollum's he's got the analytical data, like he's got the size like his brother Zion, but he's a safety now. So he was on their practice squad last season. It's interesting. They may only remember when DeJean comes back now, because DeJean's still out, we don't know where they're going to line him up.
Right.
And of course, Sidney Brown will eventually be back. So there's your 4th safety. It's going to be hard for Travis. It's going to be harder. It's going to be hard for, Tristan McCollum to make it. It's going to be hard because eventually these guys are going to play.
Maybe that's what they meant, that when DeJean does come back, at this point, they may look at him more at safety because of what they have at corner. And then that might move Bradbury into getting looks at nickel instead of safety. But you're right. They haven't done it yet. And that'll be interesting to see when they do it.
To finish this off, I may not knock on wood because it could be thrown right back at us, but I think they're okay at corner. As opposed to last summer, we said, folks, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. The quality was not going to be very good behind the 2 starters, and we didn't know Bradbury would fall off. But I think it's better now because Ringo's taken a step. Rodgers clearly could play. I mean, he's, again, because he doesn't have this ideal size that you want, but he's an athlete. We'll get into more special teams in a future show because we're going to spend probably a segment on that, doing that. But in the end, it's been this defensive battles, man. I've been like, it's been a long time since we've seen battles with a lot of quality. I think the quality that Howie's done a good job this offseason. We criticized him last summer. We had issues with the roster. We didn't look like pretty smart when they were 10-1, but it caught up with them.
Yeah.
But Howie's credit, he did say at that press conference recently, he took ownership of it. So good for him, because it's not hard, folks, to see sometimes when eventually the dam's going to be breaking, the talent's not good enough.
Yeah. Corner, yes. Safety, we'll see if Howie's done a good
True.
job. We'll see.
Well, and the backup.
Yeah,
The backup.
inside linebacker, certainly more variety, more opportunities to improve from last year. Now it's up to the players to kind of live up to that. And I think the front rush will still be the strong part of the D. All right.
Yep.
That's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. We'll be back with you Monday morning. As always, we thank you for flying with us inside the Birds. Be sure to check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com and on Twitter at phlsportsnation.